Alright, so in this video what I'd like to do is walk through the process of creating a new service order. Um, you'll see in the system that at the highest level everything is classified as work, whether it's a service job or it's a project job. And then in the process of going through adding work is when we distinguish between the two. And service is always going to be classified as our time and material items. Project work is always going to be classified as quoted work. So any work that we quote up front, we would classify that as project work. So in going through this process, the very beginning of creating each of those is very similar. It's when you start getting into the separation of whether it is service work or project work that things start getting different in terms of entering calls into the system. Ultimately, at the very end, everything is made up of jobs. So, for instance, on a service request, you might just have one job that needs to be done versus a project request, you might have several different trades involved. So, on a project request, you could have a plumbing job, an HVAC job, an electrical job, and a DDC job. And we'll talk about that some more when we go into how to create a project request. And in your projects, you might have a change order job that's a part of it. So there's a lot more components, and we can get as detailed or as basic as we want to get as we create those requests. And we wanted to have that flexibility to be very detailed if we wanted to be, but also be very basic if we wanted to be. So let's walk through the process of creating a service job. Or a service request. So everything starts here. You click up at the top or hover over this. It'll bring up options. You can either find work, add work, or approve work. For this process here, for this video, we're just going to add work, and it's going to pull up this screen. And this screen is the same whether it's a project or a service request. And it's got 3 steps. We're going to choose a customer, we're going to choose the job site, and we're going to choose a job site contact. So first thing you can do is click on this. It'll roll this out. You can click in the box and you can start typing. So let's say that we are looking to create an order for AT&T. If you type in AT and, it'll bring up all of the AT&T customers that we have in our system. You can search by that. Or let's say that you just wanted to search by a specific property manager. You know that it's Oliver. Oops. Oliver. There we go. And it'll bring up any customer that has the words Oliver in it. All right, so you can see Christopher Oliver, Michael Oliver, and here's the AT&T Property Services for Mike Oliver. So we've got that. From here, we can change the customer information, and once you make a change once, it'll always be there. So for instance, if I change this to 4712222, it's going to keep that for every single time we go back in and look up this customer. So one of the important things to understand here is in this field, this email address is where the invoice, once the work is complete, will be emailed to. So this might not be Mike Oliver's email address, it's where the invoice will get emailed to. So it's really important that this be the correct email address. And then we're working also to be able to do something like this, where you could put Mike Oliver's email in after a comma, but for right now it's just the single email address. So down here, once you've got all the customer information, you can roll that up and move into the job site. You can also keep them both open. I like to work into just one screen at a time, so I roll them up and down, and that's simply by clicking on the bar here. So I'm gonna, once I've got my customer chosen, now I'm gonna choose my job site. And depending on the customer, you could have a whole bunch of job sites. You can see here that this has, Mike Oliver has 225 different job sites associated with him, and so to get to all of those could take a little bit of time. But the best way to search for a job site really is, instead of scrolling and looking through, is to just do a search. And you can do a search by any of this information here. So for instance, if I was looking for something with the address is 110. You can do a search for 110 and it will pull up anything in the system that has 110 in it. So you can see here there's 110 South Beck, but there's also 11,000 Middle Belt because of the 110 here. So let's say that it is 11,000. If I put in 11,000, you'll see that this 110 South Beck goes away and all there is 11,000 Middle Belt. Once I click on that, it'll select all the information. Again, anything that you need to change here, you can change. From there, I'm going to close up my job site, and now I'm going to move into my job site contact. I click on the down arrow, it'll bring up all of my contacts that are job site contacts for this particular customer and job site. I see Mike Oliver there. That's perfect. It's got his email address in there. This is the phone numbers in there are all test company information. So right now you'll see this 888 number quite a bit. So that's my correct contact. I'm good to go. So now I've completed all three sections here. I've got my customer information, I've got my job site information, and I've got my job site contact. Typically for non-AT&T customers, these are going to be the customer. This is going to be who the technician should see when they get on site, or who they should be checking in and out with once they get to the job site. I'm going to click Save and Continue. You'll see it working up at the top here. Little spinning arrow or spinning circle that will tell you that it's moving on to the next page. This first page takes a little bit to load, and at that point it's when it's going to ask you, is this a project or a service order? And that's when things start going differently in terms of data entry. Again, it'll show you all the basics. Customer is up here, the job site name is up here, site address, who the contact is, their address and their phone number. Email address and phone number. And this can all be edited still. If you've made a mistake, you can always go back and edit. So at this point, I'm going to choose between a project and service order. We said that for this video, we're going to create a service order. I'll create another video where we talk about creating a project order. I'm going to go in here. This is typically where you'll write what your description was, what kind of work needs to be done. We can say customer location has no heat. Alarms going off, whatever it is, whatever the customer is telling you, this is where you'd enter that in that description field, and the technicians will see all of this. From here, there are a bunch of different fields it's going to ask you about, basic stuff that we're used to entering. One thing that is different is there's a due date and a scheduled date field. So this is really applicable when you have a date in the future where the work absolutely has to be done by. Sometimes this happens with Bank of America, where the work order is going to run out by a particular day, backflows that are due by a certain day, CSD tests, so on and so forth. So if there's a date in the future where this work absolutely has to be done by, that's what the due date is all about. So let's say that was January 27th. The scheduled date is when we're going to actually do the work. So let's say that was January 3rd. So two different dates here. Due dates is when the work absolutely has to be done. Scheduled date is when it's going to show up on our dispatch board to be performed. Other information here, time of day, preferred time of day. Do they want AM? Do they want PM? They'll take anything you put in here. You could put in after 3 p.m., whatever it might be. Hours of operation, really helpful for our dispatching, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. It'll take whatever you put in here. Called in, whoever called this in, their name. If there's a purchase order that they're providing up front for the work to be performed. And then the terms, this should automatically default to whatever the terms are for that customer. If they were a COD, it would say COD. In this case, AT&T should have shown up as net 30, so I'm working to fix that. So that's some more basic information about the call. You'll see it's created already a number that goes along with this. And this number is going to get a little bit longer. I'll talk about that in a second. But the service order, S151, location has no heat, alarms going off, due date's 127. Again, these can be the same day. If you want to leave it that way, that's perfectly fine too. Just to show you examples here. So once I've got all that information, I'm going to click Save and Show Job Choices. And now we're actually going to build the work that we're doing that goes along with this request. So in this case, I've got an HVAC request. Let's say it's for Mike Miller. It's a repair. And in this case, it's a no heat. So let's say that there's an RTU. And we can build this out larger than this is. We can make it smaller. We can take items off of this. We can add items. You can see here there's CSD testing, maintenance on furnaces, AC and heat pumps, RTUs. Whatever it is that we want to add or change on this, we can do that. What's nice about this is that the more static, and the reason why we have it this way, is if we can create some static information here, we can generate more reports based on that. So for instance, I can find out how much work is Mike Miller generating, how much work is Steve Gordon generating, what types of work is that, how often are we doing RTU repairs, how often are we doing CSD tests, what kind of margins are we generating on all of that stuff. So this static entry here is really important because it's going to help us with our reporting. So once I've got that information in here, I click simply Add Job to Order. And you'll see it pop down here at the bottom. It'll be an HVAC job, RTU, due on the 27th, scheduled for us to go out on the 3rd. And one of the things you'll notice that I added here is it's service request 151. This here is job 1, and it's an HVAC job. So just by looking at the number, you're able to see a lot about the request. It's a service job. This is job 1 of it, so there's at least one, obviously. If this was J2, you'd know that there was at least 2 components to it. And then H tells you it's an HVAC portion. So once I've got all this added, and if I wanted to, I could actually add a second one. This is a service request, but let's say I wanted an HVAC service repair, but it's also, this time we also want to do maintenance. So I can click maintain, RTU. They also, in addition to responding to the repair, they also wanted us to do a maintenance. You can add a second component, so now I've got an RTU maintenance on this portion. Would have liked for it to see maintenance, but it didn't. So one of the things you'll notice here, so the job 1 was the repair. You can add notes here to say RTU repair, RTU maintenance, and that will now show up on here. To update that, you just click on the little arrows here and it'll update the information here. For some reason it didn't take that, so I'm going to have to check on that. There we go. Once you've got all the information in there and you can see that everything's been saved successfully, you just click Save Opportunity. And now it has created this order, and you will be at the main splash page. So on this main overview page is where you're going to be looking at most of the information that goes along with our orders. It's going to give the basic information. It's going to show what jobs are a part of this. It's going to show what purchase orders have been added in the field by the technicians or us in the office. Any work orders that have been created by the technicians in the field, you will be able to click on those and view a PDF version of it. Any notes that you want to add to this work, any files that have been uploaded, including payables, including submittals, anything that we would normally upload to the service order file is going to show up here now. And then if this were a project job, you'd be able to click on an estimate tab and actually create an estimate for this. So this overview page is where you're able to get all of the information that goes along with the work that we're performing. And as soon as you create this, it will show up in your dispatch screen. And so remembering that this job was created for us to do on the 3rd, if I go to the 3rd, you can see right there that the 2 jobs I created, the RTU repair and the RTU maintenance, are both there. And when we get into the dispatching, I'll show you how you can assign those and have technicians dispatched in. But that's how to create a service request within the new software. The next video I'm going to show is how to create a project request.